I welcome you all to the 5th edition of Jaipur BookMark, South Asia's exclusive business-to-business platform for discussing books in all dimensions. Organized under the aegis of the grand literary show, the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, this edition of Jaipur BookMark is as special as it has been right from its genesis. To set the stage up, I welcome on stage the writer, critic, mentor, the director of Jaipur BookMark and Jaipur Literature Festival, Srimati Namita Gokhale, on stage.
Hello, dear friends from the publishing industry. It's a great joy always to be back here in the heart of the festival in the Darbar Hall. Unlike my dear friend Sanjoy Roy, I need constantly to look at notes because I'm a nervous speaker. Please excuse me. As I said, honored to be with so many wonderful people from the publishing industry who are themselves the core and the soul of the festival, as is this Darbar Hall. They all stand at the interstice between the idea, the word, the narrative, and communication. At the Jaipur BookMark, we follow the journey of the book through its many avatars and interpretations. In the next few days, we will have conversations about a variety of subjects of crucial importance to the publishing industry. We'll be sharing stories, anecdotes, and hard-earned learnings. In a reductionist world full of self-defeating social media echo chambers, we will continue to carry the torch for true and functional literacy, for diversity, for translations, for world literatures, and for the true dissemination of ideas. Our little blue planet is full of conflicted identities. Our common understanding can only be fed through the process of translation. India is a multilingual nation with 22 scheduled languages, hundreds of mother tongues, thousands of dialects, many of which you will discover at the festival in sessions spread out over the 5 days. We all exist in an ongoing and a constant state of translation. The Jaipur BookMark has always had a special focus on translations, and it has indeed been a catalyst and enabling agency for source language translations between Indian languages and also from and to international ones, and the support for that has come from so many people in the audience. My heartfelt thanks, not only mine, from that of the Indian publishing industry, to all of you who have supported these. Aditi Maheshwari and the Vani Foundation will announce its important annual award for Indian translation at BookMark. The French Book Office has instituted the Romé Rolla Prize for translation from French into Indian languages. And Leela Slimani, who is President Macron's recently appointed cultural ambassador for the French language, will be one of the surprise bestsellers authors at the festival. My deepest, heartiest, most grateful welcome to representatives and delegates from all the Nordic countries, from Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Sweden, and the ambassadors, and to Manu Arya also, who has helped us over the years get consistent support from the Norwegian, from Norla, and from so many other places. Because the very first year of BookMark, we had that support and we will never forget it. We also have people from France, Australia, US, UK, South America, Africa, across Asia. I won't list out all the countries. And of course, publishers from India and South Asia who are very important to us. We live in times when technology is opening up infinite possibilities. Our world needs a curation of reasoned ideas and access to knowledge, rather than the dumping of garbage and irrelevant content in the new and expanding ecosystem of the mind spaces that we virtually and physically inhabit. You will see examples of this garbage being dumped around you, as well as words of wisdom being spread in the interior and exterior spaces of the Literature Festival in the next week. So my special gratitude to Neeta Gupta, Aditi Maheshwari Goyal, Sammohan Matodia, Chavi Jain for this Feast of Ideas Ahead. Special thanks for Urvashi for always being there for Bookmark, and thank you again. And as we close, I would like to pay a tribute to one of the great pioneering figures of Indian publishing, which is the late Sri Dinanath Malhotra. His family, his son Shekhar, daughter-in-law Poonam, and granddaughter Priyanka are an integral part of the festival, and their bookstore, Full Circle, has over the years been supporting book sales at Diggy Palace with passion, with dedication. They bring a huge amount of love, and I cannot even describe the dedication they bring in. So Dinanath Malhotra's life really represents the struggle and the spirit and the inspirations of a pioneering Indian publisher. Please, can we show the AV now? Thank you all.
With Dinanath ji, we have lost an era in Indian publishing. He used to be always there at the Federation of Indian Publishers meetings, and when we were kids, we used to always see him at the New Delhi World Book Fair for the longest time. The news shook us, but he was not well for many years now. Without saying much, I would now request the Festival Director of Jaipur BookMark, Neeta Gupta ji, on stage to take the program forward. Thank you.
A very warm welcome to all of you to the 5th edition. Oh my God, it's just unbelievable that, we started in 2014 and we're here 5 years down the line. We have the same friends with us. We have, Oliver we have Wendy from Australia. We have a whole lot of Rick. So a big welcome to all of you. Welcome back to Jaipur BookMark. We have a fantastic program lined up, 23 sessions spread over the next 5 days. We start at this iconic Darbar Hall, which is a privilege. Thank you, Sanjoy, for thinking of this wonderful standalone day at the Darbar Hall. And then we move on to the JBM Haveli, which is just behind the front lawn. So tomorrow onwards, our sessions, roundtables, panel discussions, award functions, everything will be at the JBM Haveli. And just a couple of days back, I was reading this quote by Margaret Atwood about book publishing, and she says publishing books is something like putting a message in a bottle and hurtling it out to sea, and you're not sure whether, where it lands, who your readers are, but not in Jaipur, because in the next 5 days, we're going to have about over a third of a million, maybe 500,000 people stomping these venues, readers who are going to be getting their books signed by authors. They're going to be buying books, they're going to be, interested, they're going to be asking questions. So I think at Jaipur, to be a publisher, to be at Jaipur is one of the most heartening things that one can imagine. So we are all looking forward to that. We're all welcoming. We're all going to be celebrating book publishing, celebrating the word, celebrating books. And I'm looking forward to interacting with all of you at a more personal level and hoping that all of you take something back from the festival, from Jaipur BookMark in terms of business or relationships, collaborations. So here's to all of you, and congratulations and thank you for being here with us today. And I now pass on the baton to Sanjoy Roy, who will now welcome us with his special words.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neeta. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th edition of the Jaipur BookMark. It moved into Diggy Palace last year, and the reason for that is that we felt it absolutely important to integrate Jaipur BookMark and make it part of the Jaipur Literature Festival. In 2018, we still continue to fight against the forces of intolerance. And there are more people out there who want to raise their voices against everything that literature and the arts and culture stands for. And therefore, it is absolutely vital for publishers and the publishing industry to continue to do what they do fearlessly, in a determined way, to ensure that knowledge and information and love and facts and truth, these are the things that prevail. And the hatred of our times, which is not unusual, every decade or two, there is a growing or a rising of this kind of sentiment. These sentiments need to be challenged. Any of us who choose to be silent then become party to the hatred that is being spread. Publishers are the bravest people that we can imagine, because it is through their efforts and the risks that they take that they get the voice of that writer who doesn't necessarily write to entertain, but writes because he or she has a volition to write, an urge to be able to make sense of the world around us. The Jaipur BookMark, when it was conceived, has been conceived for a space, a special space, to be able to explore the many different languages, not just from across the world, but across India. The wealth of Indian literature doesn't necessarily lie in the literature that is most accessible, which is in English, but it lies in the multitude of voices and in the multiple languages that we have across the length and breadth of this country. It is with deep appreciation that I'd like to acknowledge Norla and the Royal Norwegian Embassy for their continued support and belief that translation is indeed one of the most important aspects of publishing, and the need to be able to get the voices of those who we can't easily access, be translated in different languages, is the most important point at this time of this particular century. So thank you so much for your help, to all the Nordic countries for their support this year to the Jaipur Literature Festival. Out there, the sun is shining. It's also the only day that you can actually walk around Diggy Palace and find a place to sit and chat. Make the most of it. It's going to be different tomorrow, but we look forward to welcoming you. We look forward to a wonderfully successful Jaipur Bookmark, and we hope that all of you will return year on year to discuss, debate, and take forward the vision of the publishing industry, not just here, but across the world. May I now invite His Excellency, the Ambassador to Norway, and our primary supporter of the Jaipur Bookmark, to say a few words. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, and it's very nice to be back here again, as always. Thank you for the wonderful job you all are doing for actually carrying this forward, to you, Namita, Gokhale, Mr. Nita Gupta, the whole team for all their excellent work here. It's making this really a very important event. And it's very good to be here and see that this joint journey we started 5 years ago, it's continuing, and that the festival as such is getting more and more vibrant. We are here to present a small language in a big world. However, that also significantly adds to the many layers of languages and literature that we all represent here. And for us, representing a small language, literature is actually the key to be able to keep our language live and strong and developing it. Literature remains the key for that. That's also why the government in Norway put such an emphasis on also supporting the publishing of literature. And in many ways we are a reading people. Just let me tell you a little bit about Norway and our reading habits. We are a small country with around 5 million inhabitants. In 2016, this population, it was 90% of us who read at least one book in a year. It was also sold 23 million books the same year. So, consider this. 5 million inhabitants, 23 million books sold. And that doesn't include school books, textbooks, and so on and so forth. So what does that count to? Well, we have other statistics. The average Norwegian reads around 16 books a year. Not too bad. 40% of the population reads more than 10 books per year, and 11% reads more than 30 books per year. And maybe even what I think in many ways when I speak to people from many other countries, the most impressive figure is actually that more than 80% of the parents read to their children at least 2-3 times per week. More than 80%. And I think that is to get the love for literature, to start early, that really is a key to it. Also, just on the gender thing, also there the women beat us actually. The average Norwegian woman read 18 books, the average Norwegian man 12 books per year. I was actually positively surprised when it comes to the men, I have to admit. But because in spite of the fact that we are so few, given the number of books sold, it's actually a very strong and vibrant book market. It's and of course, representing what we think for the size of our market, a fairly strong market. For the international market for our books and so forth, Jaipur is really a key, and that's why we have been cooperated with Jaipur over this year. So it's, and especially of course for us it's important, this focus on translations. And because again, being small, we like to try to help bring our literature also out to the world. Again, so we have NOLA, as many of you know, as an arm to help doing that. And actually, just last year, NOLA helped support the translation of 538 titles into other languages. Since the beginning of in 1978, NOLA has helped financing around 5,000 translations into 65 different languages. More than 50 translations have been published by Indian publishers in Indian languages and English. So the other languages have been Bengali, Hindi, Marathi, Malayalam, and Tamil. So clearly, Norway and India has a lot to offer in publishing. We have some experience to share with you, and we have certainly a lot to learn from you. So we are looking very much forward to this day together again. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I now request Sanjoy ji, Neeta ji, Namita ji to join us for lighting the lamp. It's just 2 days ago that we celebrated our festival of spring, Basant Panchami, which is also the festival of appeasing to goddess of knowledge, Saraswati. And I think we are inaugurating Jaipur BookMark today. The nature is with us. I request Naveen Kishore ji, Padma Shri Urvashi Bhutalia ji, Wendy Ware ji, William Dalrymple to please join us for lighting the lamp. Thank you. And now, the keynote address of the year by a person who has redefined South Asian Indian publishing. Shri Naveen Kishore established Seagull Books in 1982 as a publishing program in the arts and media, focusing on drama, films, art, and culture studies. Today, it also publishes literature, including poetry and serious fiction, and owns the worldwide English language publishing rights for books by Paul Celan, Jean-Paul Sartre, Moyan, and our very own Mahashweta Devi ji. Kishore turned to photography, where he extensively documented female impersonators from Manipuri, Bengali, and Punjabi theatre practices. In particular, he photographed Chapal Bhaduri, a female impersonator of a Bengali folk theatre, Jatra, in a project titled Performing the Goddess. Some of these pictures were exhibited as a part of the show called Women Goddesses. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Goethe Medal and the French civilian honor, Chevalier Order. Sir, it's an absolute honor to introduce you, to welcome you on stage. Please join us.
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Change of glasses so I can hide behind the... Yeah, I'll do that. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Just yell if I go too fast or too slow. Writing wrong, translating lives. Is the Bulgarian word taga, sorrow, melancholy, truly translatable? Are we and our childhoods translatable? Our bodies, how are we to translate what never happened to us? Some smuggle cigarettes, others alcohol or weapons. Our contraband is more dangerous. For what we conceal is stories, our own and those of others. I come from a place where people are accustomed to holding their peace or to recounting their stories in secret. A place of unarticulated taga, sorrow, melancholy, vast hidden fields of it. Writers, translators, smugglers, we're all engaged in a similar task. We translate, which is to say, we literally carry over what is desired, valued, missing, suppressed, forbidden. This is from our friend Gospodinov in a lovely little edition of Kaya called The Story Smuggler. Ownership, every thought, every memory, every emotion has a landowner. Things that happened are meant to belong to you or to me. Like a privilege acquired at birth, a litany made up of this is mine, yours, ours. Often it is nations that appropriate entire histories, lives, other nations, people, writing and rewriting of things that later become our truth. Yours and mine. Living under the heel of collective ownership can be crippling, to say the least. How does one free the event of one's life from the clutches of a possessive, even dictatorial memory and turn it into a literature of resistance? Translation as need to fight that which is wrong, writing wrong, describing through your writing the ills, the injustices that remain hidden in the midst of a dailiness that is so taken for granted as a way of life, as in, this is the way things are, have been, will be, nothing to be done. So, translating these stories into existence, translation as midwifery then, perhaps. Challenge the language you have so carefully cultivated. Revisit the meaning of words you have since childhood imbibed as universal truths. Consider the act of translation as impulse, as motivation, as a telling of that which would otherwise remain untold. So, speaking out and speaking about the forbidden, maybe, even perhaps. Do not let the frames that rule the act of translating from one language into another blinker your vision into thinking the job is done. Translation as action, as activism, as tool for translators who take up causes. Body peledebo as a translatable act of not only just the body being thrown into the fray, should the situation demand this of you, but the soul too. The soul translated as body made visible, made passion. So translate your passion. Singular, plural, it doesn't matter. What matters is the subverting of the status quo. Translation, therefore, as subversion. So far, so good. But I'm also preoccupied with this. Translation as autobiography, as memoir, maybe. After all, that which needs telling lies within, in that space where silences reign. Silences full of stories and a language that is sensed, not always heard. Breaking silences, maybe. Learning to hear them, perhaps. I once asked Romila Thapar, I said, as a historian, translating a past that needs to be shared in a present, crying out for signs of resistance, what do you think that a past, any past, may offer? And what do you think as a human being without access to your learning and training as a historian? How much of your practice over these last so many decades comes in the way of the poet you don't see yourself to be, or even the seer who Cassandra-like interprets a past so that signs of a possible future may appear as weapons of resistance? Here is what she said. One is translating all the time, isn't living a way of translating one's thoughts. Although the translation may take an unexpected form, one sees something of oneself and one's life. Yes, the historian is translating a past which demands to be shared. We all think that our translation is the only valid one, although we know that translations can vary. The translation of the past is open to debate. I may hate it when people contradict what I have said, but I concede that they have a right to do so, provided their translation of the past is based on reliable evidence. And this is when the translation moves away a little from evidence to imagination. I have never quite worked out what thrills of imagination are present in a translation. The choice of words can differ so much, as also the nuances of the meaning. When a number of historians see the past as being translated and start a debate, then it begins to take another form. I don't see myself as a poet because I don't allow poetry to influence my translation. Yet I did at one point in my early life think of writing poetry, and nor am I a seer. The world is too much with me, and I am just going along with its roller coaster ride, for I don't know where to get off. Translation as memoir makes for a better enterprise of thinking, speaking, and writing. Maybe that is why I run away from it. Can't quite figure out how to do it, how not to resist, not just my times, but also my life. If I'm speaking out, I must ask myself, why am I doing so? What am I translating and why? Translation, in one sense, is what one is doing all the time. Translating one's thoughts into speech or into action. Dear Romila Dee, what if you never had to resist your times or your life? What if the inhibition of learning was consciously, deliberately rejected, laid aside, cast off for a moment, and we had the possibility of mixing the fact and the fiction of our lives as writers and poets often do, and to write tracks for our times that combined an awareness, a sharp, clear, responsive worldview as our life and times unfold, with an instinct to study, imbibe, predict possible futures, not as prophecies, but as reasoned detective work that suggests the possibility of things becoming from things as they are. Perhaps the signs of deduction? Maybe. And let me beseech you to be patient with me, to read what follows. This is about Mahashwata Devi and her ability to combine the fact of her daily life and her fiction, and her activism that instinctively made her decipher realities and then translate them into a literature of resistance, not just as an extension of her own fighter self, but also as a human being with an evolving, growing, concerned vision. To quote Mahashwata, forensic writing, disclosing, documenting, revealing everything. On 10th February, Budhan Sabar and his wife Shauli Sabar was going to the Bada Bazaar area bordering Purulia. Suddenly the police came from the Bada Bazaar police station and snatched Budhan away on a trumped up charge. From the 10th to the 12th, the police subjected him to Kambal Dhulai, wrapped him in a blanket and beat him so that there were no marks on his body, forced him to drink country liquor repeatedly, charged him with all the dacoities happening in the area, and he kept saying yes, 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 thinking that if he said yes to everything, they'd let him go. But no. On the 12th, he was produced in court, and an order was obtained by the police for further inquiries. And so he was taken back to jail. On the 16th evening, he was taken to court again. Then back to jail again. In between, he was beaten mercilessly. On the 17th morning, he was taken from his cell. He had no gamcha or anything with him. He was asked to sweep the yard, so he did. Then he was beaten again. Then he was taken to a solitary cell. All day, the door was not opened. In the evening, the jail authorities casually declared that he had committed suicide by hanging. With what? With a piece of cloth, a gamcha, in a solitary cell? How can one commit suicide with a gamcha that one does not have? On the 18th in the morning, a reporter telephoned me and the Samiti, and we all rushed over. His wife and the others got there. By then, the first post-mortem was done. The police were insisting on the instant cremation of the body. The suburbs said, no, we don't cremate our dead, we'll take him home. So they took Buddhan's body back to their village. The police came, searched the village for the body, but the suburbs had buried him in a hidden spot to hoodwink the police. They cremated a straw carcass, shouted, Hari Bol. So everyone thought Buddhan had been cremated. Then they shifted the body to his hut. The young widow placed her husband's corpse in a hole on the ground, then spread a mat over the spot and slept on it. Shauli could sleep peacefully at night. She was content. After all, Buddhan was there. She had managed to keep him. Then the High Court ordered a second post-mortem. This shocked and angered the district magistrate and the superintendent of police. They went to the village and vans full of policemen asking everyone, why did you not cremate the body? The women went up to the policeman and said, what will you do? Kill us? Shoot? Go ahead, shoot me. Shoot us all. We won't let you have Buddha. The entire process was being videotaped by our organization, so the police stopped harassing them. Finally, they took Buddhan's body to Purulia, a bloated, rotting carcass. After the post-mortem, they wanted the family to collect the body, of which only maggots remained. The wife said, I'm too ill to collect it. If you have to give back the body, come and give it back to us in the village. But the policeman couldn't face up to that. So Buddhan is sitting there. A rotting Buddhan sabbar sits, waiting. This is not made up by me. It is what has happened. And I have to chronicle it. I'm carrying Buddhan's body somewhere here. I feel heavy. I'm burdened with him. Writing is my real world. It is where I have lived and survived. After reading this is what Romiladi wrote back to me. Dear Naveen, I'm now saying to myself that my thoughts are also the end point of a certain translation. The translation of the senses that take the form of thoughts, isn't that what Mahashvatadi is doing? She's not really using her five senses, but metaphorically, it is all coming to her through how she imagines her senses would feel it. She senses the kidnap, the torture, the death. She can see it, smell it, hear it, touch it, through willing herself to be there. The poet can will herself to be there and possibly even try to experience what is happening. But all this, the not poet cannot do. And when it has all been translated into thought, there is another translation, into words that can be spoken or written. As long as poetry was oral, words meant speech. Now they are more often read. We rarely read poetry aloud to ourselves. Translating thoughts into words raises a whole other experience that involves a choice of word, a nuance, a flavor. And these are things that one struggles with each time one writes. The struggle is much harder if it is all in the mind, however close or far one's mind may be from one's senses. Some of us struggle to get away from trying to be precise all the time. Trying to be, because one can never be precise since one is using words. We yearn to let thoughts and words float as they wish. Some of us don't know how to float them, and so we just give up. And one ends up with your question, what if? I can't think of the number of times in my life I've said to myself, what if? Not in a counterfactual way, but simply as an alternative or a number of alternatives. But the if tends to fade away. I hear you audibly. My ears trained in theatre. I write, talk, hear, read in an act of simultaneous translation across languages. Dining tables I grew up at had a mother from Lahore gently talking Punjabi, not just talking but narrating an entire Hindi film scene in smooth, polite, intuitively visual Punjabi, while my father translated into Shuddh Hindi the finer points to his mother, my grandmother, who was from Uttar Pradesh, and I, listening with barely concealed excitement to this magical description of a Raj Kapoor and Nargis scene being enacted in Punjabi, and in my head translating it into my first language, English, and then asking questions that interrupted her performance. This is common enough in our homes. Thoughts and words jostle with nuance and emphasis, with tone and accent, all of which can be lost in translation. If we read them, but they do pinpoint our language origins when they are heard. As long as poetry was oral, you say, and I salute this thought even as I continue to suggest that the act of reading poetry in one's mind is still an audible one. Only the level of whispering has changed. If written the way it is heard, there is the possibility of a silent hearing during the very act of reading. There is, of course, the I, the me of the writer as we perceive her. And then there is the I, the me of the writer as she is, one that remains hidden until the act of writing translates it, making it unhidden, translating the other within, the other that lies in wait, while she, the writer, battles language, struggling to find words and meanings and emotions that will shed light on a hidden other self. The act of writing, that is also translation. The writing is an act of intuition, actively, even furiously translating thought into language. The desperate storytelling does not always position itself in the objective. It is rather personal and political. It also allows space for the reader to take away what they can or wish to and attribute their own meanings to the stories. It is left to the reader to find motivation or strategy or allusion or method in her texts. A readerly act of translation? Perhaps, maybe. The act of reading is also as translation, to decipher, decode, make assumptions. Reading is objective, reading objectively. The personal and the objective versus the subjective reader who filters through her own lenses. For Mahashwata, the position she took through the many lives and many characters she sired was born out of an instinct to bear witness. Literature as an act of witnessing, documenting the dark times under the guise of storytelling. Another act of translation? Maybe. Who knows? In conclusion, instead of opening up possibilities, we set up nation states that ghettoize the book, make it a commodity to be hounded, chased to the ground, bought and sold across territories, across languages, like literary slaves. I guess what I'm attempting to express is that in this, our world of publishing, too much time, energy, money is spent on creating structures that ultimately box us in. And yet, these precise boundaries do melt and blur when so many emotions spring from what you do and what we do, the way you do them, the way we do them. The tingle and the excitement of the words we find, translate, secure, bind in the nicest possible manner for a community of interested readers who don't really know, or if they did know, don't always give a damn about labels and territories and conveniences, both public and private. They know very little about how a book makes its way into their hands as long as it continues to do so, with a regularity that can only be described as unrelenting and reliable and timely. It is the task of the publisher to act as a conduit between the writerly act of telling untold stories, sharing new ideas, shedding light on older ones with readers that may not always find their way to these books. So translation as a bridging activity, maybe. My juxtaposition of these two voices at the cost of underplaying mine is a deliberate act suggesting that this is what publishers do. They resist the personal front staging that any act of presentation of this nature assumes as a given. They translate other voices, other stories, other poems into books that readers can then hold and read. I find this business of setting goals a restraining exercise, allowing yourself to be handcuffed, a constraint, a boundary, a fence, a limit, a confining, achieve, implement, be result-oriented within a given time frame. Swords hanging overhead, self-imposed targets, the bane of a world governed by the marketplace, perform or perish, disappear, vanish, fade away, be replaced by others, till they too meet the same fate, line after line of tin soldiers stretching into the distance. Ideas need a free rein. To be able to roam freely, sometimes this can be a very exhilarating thing. The thrill of not knowing what lies ahead, the nervous pleasure that stems from taking a risk, trusting that which is intuitive in you. Not being able to predict or foresee is not a sign of foolhardiness or a crime. After all, it is the future. No amount of mathematics and spending sleepless nights over an abacus of uncertainty will accurately foretell the future. Let it arrive, this future. When it does, embrace it. As you're present, see what it unfolds, observe the process, learn. After all, what we do as publishers of reasonable independence is creative. There is an art and a logic, even a method to our passion, only it is different from the dictates of a world desperate to clone itself, replicate, bringing something that stems from the minds and hearts of people we call authors and poets into this world is unique, something that did not exist in quite that way before. You made it happen. You translated it from idea into word, from imagination into reality. You made it into that which we hold in our hands. You made it into a book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Wiser words won't spoken. Writing is an act of translation. Reading, too, is an act of translation. I thank you for defining the very motif of Jaipur BookMark, that is translation for each one of us here. And with this, I, Aditi Maheshwari Goyal, would like to hand over the stage to Shashwati, who is going to be our host for the rest of the 5 days. Thank you so much for being a part of this inaugural ceremony. Namaskar.